Catherine had worked as a waitress for 3 years, respected by coworkers and trusted by her managers for her steady, professional attitude. One night, Kevin arrived already angry about the valet and spent 2 hours criticizing everything: the food, the timing, and especially Catherine. He mocked her service and made personal remarks about her appearance loud enough for other tables to hear. She kept her head down, answered calmly, and continued doing her job, even when her fingers tightened briefly around her order pad. When the $180 bill came, he left a $1 tip. Catherine looked at the receipt, stepped closer, and whispered something in his ear. The reaction was immediate. His face drained of color, his jaw locked, and a faint sheen of sweat appeared on his temple. Whatever she said shifted everything. If you want to know what that whisper was and why it shook him, subscribe and stay with us, because to understand that moment, we need to go back to the beginning.
The dining room at Bellamy Row operated on controlled cadence. Linen fell in clean lines. Stemware caught the low amber light without glare. Cutlery met porcelain in restrained intervals, a soft, percussive rhythm that never rose above conversation. Catherine Adams moved through it with calibrated economy tray balanced at shoulder height, spine neutral, steps placed heel to toe to avoid vibration in the floorboards. She modulated her voice to a low register that kept tables steady. 3 years on the floor had trained her to read posture and breath the way others read menus. The front doors opened and the cadence fractured. Kevin Montgomery entered without haste, yet the air altered around him. He corrected the valet before the valet had finished speaking, tone precise, volume contained. He did not escalate. He narrowed. Inside, he paused half a beat too long, scanning sightlines, measuring the room as if conducting a sight survey. His gaze settled on Catherine with the flat appraisal of someone accustomed to issuing evaluations. At table 12, he began with water temperature. "Not chilled enough," he said, sliding the glass a fraction of an inch as if adjusting a misaligned instrument. When she replaced it, he inspected the meniscus before touching it to his lips. He adjusted the wineglass by its base, reorienting the logo away from him. He commented on bread timing, on the angle of the plate, on the spacing between fork and knife. Each correction was delivered in the same clipped cadence, as if reading from a checklist. Catherine recorded modifications without visible reaction. Her pen moved in short, efficient strokes. A small muscle near her left eye tightened once, then settled. When she set down his entree, aligning the protein at 6 o'clock relative to his dominant hand. His eyes dropped to her uniform and returned to her face without warmth. "You look like they pulled you off the street," he said, calibrated just under the threshold of a scene. A couple 2 tables over paused mid-gesture. A fork hovered. No one intervened. Catherine adjusted the plate when he pushed it an inch closer to the table's edge. She corrected it by the same inch. When she offered fresh pepper, his fingers flicked in a dismissive arc, not touching her, close enough to register. 2 hours passed in incremental attrition. He found fault in posture, in cadence, in the imagined presence of an attitude she had not displayed. She maintained service sequence, cleared from the right, poured from the right, never allowing her wrist to tremor. Her respiration stayed even. Only once did her jaws set, briefly, before smoothing back into professional neutrality. The check totaled $180 before gratuity. He reviewed it line by line as if auditing a contract. His signature was deliberate, slow strokes anchoring the page. He removed a single crumpled bill from his wallet and placed it on the folder without sliding it toward her. $1. He set it down the way a verdict is entered into record. Catherine picked up the folder. Her fingers closed around the edge with controlled pressure. She looked at the bill, then at him. The skin along his jaw tightened. A small pulse flickered beneath it. She lowered her head as if concluding the exchange and stepped closer, reducing distance without changing volume. Her breath reached his ear. "I'm the daughter of Veronica Adams," she said quietly. She ended your life once. Looks like it didn't stick, did it? The reaction was not theatrical. It arrived in fragments. A blink that reset too quickly. A swallow that failed to clear his throat. The tendons at the side of his neck stood out in relief. His eyes flattened, then searched her face with sudden precision, as if confirming an identification. Catherine straightened and turned away. Behind her, fabric shifted. His fingers closed on the tablecloth, knuckles blanched. The chair legs scraped half an inch, a sound he did not intend. At the host stand, the maître d' began to step forward, then halted when he saw Kevin stare track Catherine's movement, like a sight picture aligning on target. Kevin reached into his jacket and withdrew a card. He held it between two fingers for a beat, a signal rather than an offer. Catherine did not take it. He left it on the table. When she returned to clear the setting, the card lay beside the empty glass. A name, a private number, a crest stamped in silver she recognized from a keepsake box she had once opened without permission. Naval Special Warfare. Beneath the crest, a single line. Call me, alone. In the staff corridor, the restaurant's controlled ambiance dissolved into tile, stainless steel, and fluorescent light. The hum of refrigeration units replaced string music. Catherine stood at the sink and turned the faucet to full hot. Steam lifted in thin spirals. She scrubbed once, methodical palms, backs of hands, interdigital spaces, thumbs, wrists, then rinsed. She reached for soap again without registering she had already completed the cycle. Its second wash was identical to the first. The water reddened her skin, her fingers remained cold. Her manager approached at a measured pace, stopping just outside her peripheral vision before stepping in. His eyes scanned her face the way one checks for visible trauma. No lacerations, no swelling, no tremor. "You okay?" he asked. Catherine dried her hands with controlled pressure, folded the paper towel once, and discarded it. She nodded. The motion was precise, limited range, as if conserving energy. "I need the check," she said. The signed slip, and whatever camera coverage we have of table 12, he hesitated. A crease formed between his brows. "Catherine, please." He retrieved the folder from the office. The merchant copy remained clipped inside. Kevin's signature dominated the lower half of the page, ink pressed hard enough to emboss faintly through the paper. The tip line held a single digit. Catherine removed a clean server envelope from the supply drawer. She slid the receipt inside without folding it. On the flap, she wrote the date and time in block print, adding the table number. The pen did not shake. She sealed the envelope and pressed along the adhesive strip with her thumb, ensuring full contact, as if preserving evidentiary integrity. Outside, the service alley held the damp odor of concrete and exhaust. A delivery truck idled at the far end. The night air carried a metallic edge. Catherine's phone was already unlocked in her hand. Veronica answered on the second ring. She did not greet, she listened. The faint intake and release of breath on the other end was steady, unhurried. She absorbed the cadence of Catherine's speech, the gaps between sentences, the background noise of clattering pans and a closing door. When Catherine finished, Veronica exhaled once. The sound was controlled, not relief assessment complete. "Did he say my name?" Veronica asked. "No," Catherine said. "I did." A pause extended half a beat longer than conversational rhythm. "You shouldn't have," Veronica said. The words carried focus, not reprimand, but it's done. Catherine leaned her shoulder against brick. The texture pressed through the fabric of her uniform. "You knew he'd be like this." "I knew what he was in training," Veronica replied, "and I knew what he learned after." Catherine closed her eyes briefly. The memory of the $1 bill registered with disproportionate weight, as if gravity had altered around it. "Tell me what happened," she said. Not the version you edited for bedtime. Veronica's voice lowered, tone shifting into the register she used when discussing matters once subject to classification controls. Bud S. isn't the whole story, she said, selecting each word. After selection, after the trident, there are still men who think the Uniform Code of Military Justice applies to someone else. Kevin was one of them. He crossed lines. Incremental violations. He was reported. I reported him. And he got punished, Catherine said. He got processed, Veronica corrected. Command investigation under JAGMON. Administrative actions. Legal review. The Navy documents. It does not always excise. He didn't go away. He adapted. Through the alley's narrow opening, Catherine watched silhouettes move behind the restaurant's rear door. Routine continued inside as if nothing had shifted. He's 65, she said. Why is he still doing this? Because it worked for him, Veronica answered. Because rank and virtue get conflated. Catherine's jaw tightened, then released. What do we do? On the line, a drawer opened. Paper slid against paper. The faint, deliberate movement of a file being extracted. I kept what I was authorized to keep, Veronica said, and I kept more in my head. Catherine swallowed. Have you been waiting for this? I'm telling you, Veronica said, voice firm, you're not calling him. You're coming home. Now. Keep that receipt sealed. Maintain evidence integrity. No public statements. No posts. You do not discuss my name with coworkers. Catherine shifted her gaze toward the street. A black SUV remained at the curb beyond the alley mouth. Headlights off. No hazard flash. The vehicle did not idle loudly, but a faint vibration tremored the air, subtle enough to register only if one was listening for it. Her pulse slowed, deliberate, as if her body had chosen focus over adrenaline. Mom? She said quietly, eyes fixed on the dark windshield. I think he's still here. Veronica's house was orderly with clinical precision. Surfaces cleared, angles aligned. Even the framed photographs on the wall were rotated a few degrees away from the center line of the room, as if memory itself were subject to regulation. Catherine placed the sealed envelope on the kitchen table with deliberate care. The paper met the wood softly, but she set it down as though logging physical evidence. No smudging, no unnecessary contact. Veronica did not reach for it. Her eyes traced the handwriting across the flap. Date, time, the careful notation. For a fraction of a second, the muscles along her jaw loosened. You did that, right? She said. Catherine's throat worked before sound emerged. I didn't do it right. I lost control. Veronica shook her head once. Controlled range of motion. You spoke. There's a difference. She crossed to a drawer built flush into the cabinetry and unlocked it with a small brass key she kept on a separate ring. From inside, she withdrew a thin folder. The edges were worn, not from neglect, but from repeated handling followed by precise restorage. She opened it. Copies. Redacted correspondence. Formal memoranda drafted in sterile, procedural language. One page bore the cadence. Catherine recognized instantly references to a command investigation conducted under the JAGMON framework, findings summarized in abstracted conclusions, substantive paragraphs obscured by thick black bars. Catherine scanned the text. Her pupils constricted at the jargon she understood and the void where context should have been. Her stomach tightened. You went through all this, she said. I went through what the system allowed, Veronica replied evenly, and what the system didn't correct. Catherine looked up, a faint tremor at the corner of her mouth. If the Navy handled it, why is he free to? Accountability isn't a single adjudicative event, Veronica said. It's sustained pressure until structural failure occurs. She moved to her laptop. The keys responded under measured strokes-controlled cadence, not rushed. Her screen reflected in her glasses, data fields opening in sequence. First, Veronica said, We preserve what currently exists: the receipt, reservation metadata, security footage. I asked my manager about the cameras, Catherine said, her tongue pressed briefly against dry teeth. Who maintains the security system? Veronica asked without looking away. Catherine hesitated. I don't know. A vendor? New contract last year. Find out. Catherine placed the call. Her tone stayed neutral, professional, as if requesting shift coverage. When the manager supplied the vendor's name, her fingers tightened around the phone casing. The tendons in her wrist stood out sharply. She tapped speaker. Veronica heard it. The LLC name, polished corporate branding, a routing number through a private exchange. The muscle at the corner of Veronica's eye flickered once. He can access the cameras, Catherine said. He can purge the storage array, Veronica corrected. Tonight. Catherine's lips parted. No moisture gathered there. Then everything that happened exists redundantly, Veronica said. Point-of-sale transaction logs, cloud-based archival backups, valet intake records, third-party reservation platforms, and human witnesses, even if they have not yet recognized their evidentiary value. She reached for a notebook and wrote 3 words across the top of a clean page in block letters: chain of custody. The pen did not hesitate. Catherine watched, breath shallow but controlled, as her mother began listing repositories, timestamps, potential spoliation risks. This was not anger. It was procedure. Veronica slid the notebook toward her. You want vindication? She asked quietly. Then you build this clean. No contamination. No improvisation. Catherine nodded once. Her jaws set. The envelope on the table remained untouched, but it no longer looked fragile. Veronica's phone vibrated against the granite countertop. The sound was brief, mechanical. A text preview illuminated the screen from an unknown number, a street address. A timestamp repeated, 2:15, 2:15, 2:15 a.m. One sentence beneath it, tell your daughter to forget my name. Veronica did not reach for the device immediately. Her respiration remained even, diaphragm steady, but her left hand, resting flat on the counter, curled inward by degrees. The knuckles rose pale beneath the skin as the fist closed, slow and deliberate. At 2:05 a.m., Veronica eased the car to the curb half a block from the address and cut the headlights before the engine fully settled. The sudden dark folded around them. She did not announce arrival with light or sound. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, steady, while her eyes adjusted and mapped the street entries, exits, reflective surfaces, second-story windows. Catherine sat upright in the passenger seat, spine aligned against the seat back. Her phone lay face down on her thigh. No screen glow, no incidental reflection against glass. Her breathing moved shallow and controlled through her nose. The address corresponded to a private office suite above a shuttered storefront. Blank windows. No signage illuminated. The kind of place that suggested anonymity by design. They remained inside the vehicle. The exterior door opened. A man exited first, mid-40s, tailored wool coat falling clean along the shoulders, a slim document pouch secured beneath his arm. He descended the narrow steps without looking back. Several seconds later, Kevin emerged. Even beneath the sodium streetlight, his posture carried rigid alignment, shoulders squared, chin level, gait measured. His hair caught the light in a muted silver line. The same expression Catherine remembered from the restaurant marked his face, a controlled, clinical contempt. Her throat constricted. She swallowed once, forcing her gaze to remain observational rather than reactive. Kevin closed the distance to the other man. Their exchange was brief. The words dissipated before reaching the car, but the choreography did not. Kevin kept his hands close to his torso. He shifted his stance, angling his body to shield the interaction from the open street. His nod was precise, short, downward, final. He opened his coat with 2 fingers and withdrew something small from the inner breast pocket. The object disappeared into the other man's pouch in a single motion. The man's hand closed immediately, fingers compressing as if limiting exposure to air. Veronica did not blink. Her gaze tracked the sequence: proximity, transfer, duration. Her jaw remained still, but the tendon along her neck tightened briefly before settling. Catherine's voice barely carried. "What was that?" Veronica answered without shifting her focus. "Possibilities are irrelevant. We observe. We preserve." Kevin stepped back, already lifting his phone to his ear. As he began walking, the severity in his features eased. The corners of his mouth lifted into something approximating warmth. The modulation was seamless, practiced. He spoke into the phone, expression calibrated. Then his gaze moved. Not directly at their vehicle. It traveled across the row of parked cars in a slow, assessing sweep, the kind of scan that cataloged variance. Catherine felt a pull low in her abdomen when his eyes paused, only a fraction longer than incidental on their windshield. Her fingers pressed into the fabric of her jeans until the knuckles blanched. Veronica's right hand shifted toward the ignition, not turning the key, only positioning. Her breathing remained even. Evan broke the scan and continued down the sidewalk. They waited until his vehicle exited the block and the sound of its engine dissolved into distance. Only then did Veronica start their car. She pulled away without acceleration, merging into the street as if returning from a late errand. Back inside the house, Catherine's phone vibrated. A message from her manager. Security footage from that night was unavailable due to a system issue. She read it once, then again. A tremor passed through her fingers and stopped. Her shoulders stayed level. Veronica extended her hand. Catherine placed the phone into it. Veronica read the message. No visible reaction registered beyond a slight narrowing of her eyes. "He initiated a purge," she said. The statement carried no inflection. Catherine's jaw tightened. "So he humiliates women and deletes the record." Veronica met her gaze. The look held steady. "He can attempt data suppression. That is not erasure." Catherine's phone buzzed again. A notification from her building's front desk. "There's a man here asking for you by full name. Says it's urgent." The skin at the base of Catherine's neck prickled. She felt the pulse there accelerate against her collar. Veronica's eyes moved toward the front window, then back to her daughter. "Do not go downstairs." The doorbell sounded once, measured, controlled. A second ring followed, held longer. Catherine approached the door on silent steps and leaned toward the peephole. Her breath stalled halfway through her chest. Kevin stood on the other side, face tilted slightly upward, wearing a smile precise enough to be rehearsed. The expression suggested familiarity, not intrusion. Veronica remained behind her, unmoving. Veronica did not open the door. She stepped close enough that her voice could pass through the wood without elevation. Her posture remained upright, shoulders squared, as if addressing a subordinate across a briefing table. "Leave." On the other side, Kevin's smile widened. It was audible in the way he formed her name. "Veronica," he called, drawing it out with deliberate familiarity. "You always did love hiding behind procedure." Catherine stood several paces back, spine straight, chin level. Her hands remained open at her sides, fingers slightly curved so they would not curl into fists. She kept her breathing measured, resisting the impulse to step forward. Kevin's tone shifted, lacquered with artificial warmth. "Catherine, right? You've got your mother's eyes, that same righteous look before she breaks something." Veronica's jaw flexed once, a controlled contraction. "Walk away." A quiet chuckle slipped through the door. "You taught her to preserve receipts like evidentiary exhibits. Admirable. Do you know what else I remember about you, Veronica?" Silence met him. "I remember you in a corridor with a file you had no authorization to access," Kevin continued. "I remember you believing you were the system." Veronica's hand moved to the chain lock. She did not touch the handle. Her fingers tested the tension of the metal link, confirming engagement. Kevin leaned closer. His voice dropped, losing its performative brightness. "You told her I committed small crimes. You still use that language? Because I recall a report, a casualty packet, your signature in proximity to a discrepancy." Catherine's breath halted mid-inhale. The air lingered in her chest. Veronica's expression did not fracture, but something receded behind her eyes, a reflexive withdrawal, contained in a fraction of a second. Kevin continued, cadence smooth. "Guilt is a durable decoration. Some people wear it for decades. I wonder what she'd conclude when she reviews the full record." Catherine turned her head slightly toward her mother. Her brows drew together, not in accusation, but in search. Her lips parted, waiting. Veronica did not offer a denial. Her nostrils flared once, subtle. Her gaze fixed above the door handle, a deliberate anchoring point. Kevin straightened. The shift in weight creaked faintly through the door frame. "You're going to exercise judgment," he said. "You'll return to your routine, continue serving tables. Allow this to dissipate." A pause. "And if you don't, I will ensure your daughter is briefed on the elements you've omitted." Veronica's voice, when it came, was low and precise. "You will not approach her again." His smile returned to his tone, then maintained discipline over her statements. Footsteps receded along the hallway carpet. The elevator chimed, doors sliding shut with hydraulic softness. Silence followed. Catherine did not move until she heard the building's main entrance close below. Only then did her shoulders drop a fraction. When she turned, Veronica had taken a seat at the kitchen table. She placed both palms flat against the surface, fingers splayed as if stabilizing against invisible motion. The tendons along the back of her hands stood in relief. Catherine's voice wavered despite effort. What did he mean? Veronica's eyes shifted to the sealed envelope resting on the table. The receipt, edges aligned. For a moment, the composure she maintained thinned enough for Catherine to glimpse the accumulated weight beneath it. Veronica spoke with deliberation, each word paced. "Years ago, documentation was altered to preserve a career trajectory. I did not initiate the falsification. But the administrative liability did not resolve where it should have." Catherine swallowed. He did it. A single nod. It carried no flourish, only confirmation. Catherine's phone vibrated against the countertop. The sound was abrupt in the quiet room. An image filled the screen. Catherine at work earlier that week, balancing a tray through the dining room. The photograph had been taken from outside the window. Reflections framed her in glass. Her pulse struck once, hard, against her throat. Beneath the image, a single line of text. "Next time, I won't knock." Veronica read it without comment. The muscle at the corner of her eye flickered once, then stilled. Veronica did not dial emergency services. She selected a contact saved under a surname, nothing more. When the line connected, the man who answered did not offer greeting. He responded with his last name and a clipped acknowledgement, as if entering a secured briefing. Veronica spoke in compressed sequences. Names, dates, the security vendors LLC, the purged surveillance footage, the in-person intimidation, the photograph taken from outside the restaurant window. She did not qualify her statements with adjective. She did not raise her voice. When she finished, the silence on the line extended long enough for Catherine to hear the faint cadence of the man's breathing through the speaker. "You understand what you're initiating," he said at last. "I understand the exposure," Veronica replied. "Commence a preliminary inquiry. I will provide a sworn statement." A pause. Paper shifted on the other end. "And your daughter?" Catherine leaned closer to the phone, watching her mother's profile remain composed. "She will submit a statement," Veronica said, with counsel present. By midday, Veronica had secured a meeting with an attorney whose sentences were stripped of ornament. The woman's questions arrived with surgical precision sequence, corroboration, documentary support. Affidavits were drafted, time, location, verbatim quotations to the extent memory allowed. Identification of preserved physical evidence. The attorney's pen moved in measured strokes. No unauthorized recordings, she said without looking up. No direct engagement, no digital commentary. Preserve evidentiary integrity. If contact occurs, document date, time, and medium. Catherine wrote each instruction in a notebook. Her handwriting remained controlled, letters evenly spaced, despite the intermittent tightening beneath her ribs. At the restaurant, the shift in tone was immediate. Management addressed her with formal detachment. The assistant manager asked her to step into the office. Inside, a small plastic evidence bag lay on the desk, folded bills visible through the transparent film. Beside it, a printed point-of-sale discrepancy report, transaction numbers highlighted. The assistant manager kept his gaze fixed on the paper. "There's a register variance associated with your terminal," he said. "We're obligated to follow policy." Catherine looked at the cash. She did not extend her hand. "That is not mine," she said. Her voice carried a narrow strain but did not fracture. He swallowed, Adam's apple rising sharply. "They're asserting it is." The structure of the maneuver assembled itself in her mind with clinical clarity. Introduce a credibility defect. Establish a documented allegation. Position her as administratively unreliable before any external inquiry progressed. Her fingers curled once against her palm, then released. "Retrieve the audit trail for that register," Catherine said. "Full timestamp sequence, manager override entries, associated camera coverage." His mouth compressed. "Surveillance is still offline." She nodded, slow. "Then pull keycard access logs for this office and the cash handling cabinet." He blinked, momentarily disoriented. "We don't." "We do," she said. The steadiness in her tone surprised even her. She exited the office and stopped short. Two uniformed officers stood near the host stand. One held a notepad at chest level. The other observed her with a fixed, evaluative stare. "Ma'am," the first officer said, "we need you to accompany us." Catherine's gaze moved past them, through the front window. Kevin sat in his vehicle at the curb, hands positioned at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. His face was expressionless, jaw set, eyes forward. He did not need to smile. Catherine lifted her chin and stepped forward. Conversations in the dining room thinned to murmurs. Silverware paused mid-air. The collective gaze settled on her shoulders, her hands, the line of her back. As the officer reached for her wrist, her phone vibrated once in her pocket, then again. She did not look down, but she felt the outline of the device against her hip. A message from Veronica appeared on the screen she could not see. "Do not speak without counsel. I'm on my way." The officer's fingers closed around her wrist, firm but procedural. In that instant, Catherine understood the architecture of the attack. This was not intimidation for silence. It was an attempt to formalize doubt, to place her name in an official report with the word discrepancy beside it. To record her as unreliable before she ever testified. Her shoulders remained square as she allowed herself to be escorted forward. At the station, Catherine sat with her hands folded on the metal table. Fingers interlaced, thumbs resting still against each other. Her back did not touch the chair. Her eyes fixed on a neutral point just above the detective's right shoulder, avoiding the instinct to scan the room. She did not speak. The detective began with softened cadence. Questions about her shift. How long she had worked there. Whether she was tired. His tone carried the suggestion of informality. Then he placed the plastic evidence bag on the table between them and slid it forward. The folded bills pressed flat against the clear film. Catherine did not lower her gaze. "I want an attorney," she said. The detective's lips compressed for a fraction of a second before smoothing back into professional neutrality. "You can help yourself here," he replied. "No need to escalate this." Her breathing remained even. "I want an attorney." Silence settled. The fluorescent light above them hummed faintly. When Veronica entered with counsel, the shift in posture across the table was immediate. She did not raise her voice. She did not touch the furniture. She stepped into the room with the composure of someone accustomed to adversarial environments. The attorney took the seat beside Catherine and placed a legal pad on the table. Her pen rested ready. "We'll need documentation," she said. "Evidence intake log. Identity of the discovering party. Chain of custody from point of recovery. Storage location. Handling officers." Her tone did not sharpen, it narrowed. The detective's responses shortened. A third figure stood near the door, plain clothes, posture unremarkable. When he produced his badge, it was brief, controlled, returned to his pocket without flourish. "I'd like the responding officer's body camera footage," he said. The detective's eyes tightened. "On what basis?" "On the basis that we account for every hand that touched this item," the federal agent replied evenly. An hour later, the detective returned. The color had drained slightly from his face. He did not sit. On the body camera recording, an officer's hand hovered near Catherine's apron before any verbal advisement. The movement was partially obscured by the hose stand, but the sequence was clear enough. Contact preceded formal interaction. The attorney's pen stopped mid-line. Chain of custody fractured before documentation began. The allegation dissolved without ceremony. No apology accompanied it. Outside in the parking lot, night air settled cool against Catherine's skin. Veronica stood close, not touching her, but near enough that warmth radiated between them. Catherine's voice thinned. "He can do anything." Veronica's expression remained composed. A faint brightness gathered along her lower eyelids, held in check. "He can do some things," she said. "Those limits define the case." The federal agent conferred quietly with Veronica and the attorney, then shifted his attention to Catherine. "You used his full name in a public setting," he said. His tone was evaluative, not accusatory. "That matters." Catherine's brow drew slightly inward. "Why?" "Because Veronica Adams has an administrative history," he said, "and Kevin Montgomery has a separate one, distinct files, unconnected timelines." He paused, measuring her reaction. "Your statement created a nexus the system recognizes. It triggered review parameters." Veronica's eyelid flickered once. "You had prior indicators." The agent did not nod. He did not refute it. "There are signals," he said. "Insufficient for indictment without corroboration. Intimidation patterns. Obstructive behavior. Possible financial irregularities. We're establishing predicate." Catherine felt relief press briefly against her ribs, followed by the weight of implication. "This had not begun with her. If he perceives you as the sole variable," the agent continued, "his focus narrows. Predictable behavior creates opportunity." Veronica's jaw aligned, muscle tightening along the hinge. Then predictability becomes leverage. Later, in her apartment, Catherine lay awake. The ceiling above her remained dark. She held her phone against her chest, screen dimmed. It rang once, unknown number. She did not answer. Seconds later, a voicemail notification appeared. She pressed play. Kevin's voice filled the room, intimate in its volume, calibrated low. "You involved your mother," he said softly. "She's always favored campaigns." A faint pause followed, the sound of measured breathing. "I wonder," he added, a smile audible in the cadence, "whether she disclosed what occurred the last time someone attempted to testify without contamination." The message ended. Catherine stared into the dark, the phone still against her palm. The following days advanced with procedural precision. Sworn statements were executed under penalty of perjury. Dates were cross-referenced against shift schedules. Times were reconciled with transaction logs. The restaurant's reservation platform produced metadata entries immune to physical deletion user IDs, booking confirmations, server assignments. The point-of-sale system generated time-stamped receipts, including Kevin's $180 check and the digitized signature preserved in the merchant copy Catherine had sealed in an envelope. The valet company responded to a formal records request. An incident log surfaced from the same night. Notation of a complaint at arrival. An insistence on speaking to someone in charge. Kevin's name written in hurried block letters by an employee who had not understood the significance at the time. Veronica's contact moved through formal channels only. Requests issued with documented authority. Subpoenas supported by probable cause affidavits. No informal retrievals. No procedural shortcuts that could compromise admissibility later. Kevin adjusted. The messages stopped. No more late-night calls. No photographs. Instead, a letter arrived at the attorney's office bearing the header of Kevin's counsel. The language was dense and polished references to defamation, reputational harm, unauthorized disclosure of private matters. It invoked prior administrative proceedings as if they remained active weapons. Veronica read the letter once, then again. Her eyes moved steadily across each paragraph. She did not blink. When she finished, she opened the folder she had safeguarded for years. From it, she removed a single page Catherine had never seen. The paper was worn along the edges. A contemporaneous memorandum, several names redacted in thick strokes, but not all. A timeline structured in military format, a discrepancy embedded within it. A signature block whose formatting deviated subtly from the purported author's standard. Catherine leaned closer. Her breath stalled briefly at the back of her throat. "What is that?" Veronica kept her voice level. "It's the structural fault in the narrative he threatened me with." Catherine's eyes traced the lines again. "You had this." "I had enough to understand the truth," Veronica said. "Not enough to introduce it without the appearance of personal animus. Without corroboration, it would have been characterized as retaliation." She met her daughter's gaze. "He has now supplied obstruction, witness intimidation, retaliatory conduct. That modifies the prosecutorial posture." The federal agent arranged contact under controlled conditions. No unsupervised meetings. No informal exchanges. A structured engagement designed to capture conduct within evidentiary parameters. Kevin agreed to attend a meeting, not with Catherine, not with Veronica, but with an intermediary presented as a discrete solution. Someone positioned as capable of resolving reputational exposure. He entered the room with the same rigid confidence he carried into the restaurant. Shoulders squared, coat tailored to fall without crease. He extended a hand, offered small talk with the cadence of a man accustomed to leverage. He sat. He smiled. The intermediary responded in neutral tones. The conversation began in generalities, mutual interests, risk mitigation, pathways to quiet resolution. Then Kevin's eyes shifted. A reflection tremored in the glass of a darkened picture frame behind the intermediary. Subtle. A distortion inconsistent with ambient light. His pupils constricted. He did not look upward toward the ceiling. His gaze moved laterally, calculating sightlines. The smile remained, but the muscles at the corners of his mouth stiffened, shape held without warmth. He stood abruptly. The chair legs scraped against the floor in a sharp line of sound. For a fraction of a second, the room stilled. His attention dropped to the intermediary's wrist. The watch casing sat slightly thicker than conventional. His jaw tightened once. "You believe this is clever," he said. The tone had flattened, stripped of affability. He pivoted toward the door. From a separate location, Catherine watched the live feed. The image transmitted without audio lag. She saw the precise moment something shifted behind his eyes. The transition from calculated negotiation to operational decision. His right hand moved inside his jacket as he walked. The motion was smooth, deliberate. Catherine felt her pulse strike once against her ribs as the feed continued. They did not surge the hallway with noise or unnecessary force. The intermediary stepped aside without hesitation, maintaining distance as trained. The federal team closed the perimeter with measured spacing, no pylon, no escalation beyond what was required to control the space. Containment first. Clarity second. Evidence always preserved. Kevin crossed the threshold into the corridor, his right hand still inside his jacket. At the far end, a federal agent squared his stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands visible, but ready. His voice carried without strain. "Kevin Montgomery, step away from your jacket and keep your hands where we can see them." Kevin halted mid-stride. A small muscle jumped along his jawline. Once, then again. He drew his hand out slowly. Empty. His fingers opened, palm outward, the gesture compliant. The smile returned to his face, but it sat differently now, drawn tight, lips thin across enamel. "Of course," he said, voice smoothed back into civility. "Procedure." Another agent approached, warrant packet visible at chest level. No dramatic display, just documentation. The top page bore a federal magistrate's signature, ink dark against white. Kevin's eyes scanned the header, then the statutory citations. They paused at the signature block. His pupils contracted, briefly recognition of jurisdiction beyond influence. "What is this?" he asked, tone controlled. "A misunderstanding?" "It's an arrest," the agent replied. Kevin's gaze shifted laterally, mapping distance to stairwell, elevator, side corridor. The calculation lasted less than a second. His shoulders lowered a fraction. The building had no structural weakness he could exploit. Behind the line, his attorney attempted to interject, voice sharpened by indignation. Words layered over one another, unlawful, prejudicial, retaliatory. The agents did not engage. They continued the advisement, measured and complete. Veronica stood several feet away. She did not look at the attorney. She looked only at Kevin. When his eyes found hers, something old surfaced between them. Training hallways, institutional corridors, two officers who had once shared a uniform and diverged in what they believed it required. Kevin's lips parted as if forming an argument he had rehearsed for years. Veronica stepped forward one pace, close enough to be heard without raising her voice. "You don't get to wear honor like camouflage," she said. His expression flickered. Anger rose, first subtle tightening around the eyes, then calculation, scanning for witnesses, for optics. Beneath both, a thin current of fear edged into his features before he suppressed it. His wrists were secured without spectacle, double-locked, checked. In the days that followed, the case expanded through documentary evidence rather than rhetoric. Financial records tied Kevin's security firm to the restaurant's surveillance contract. Administrative credentials traced deletion commands within the camera system to accounts under his control. Digital forensic review linked the intimidation messages photographs, anonymized calls to paid relay services and devices purchased through intermediaries who left transactional footprints once subpoenaed. Each layer was logged, each entry time-stamped, chain of custody maintained. In a conference room framed by flags and muted lighting, Kevin sat across from uniformed legal counsel and civilian prosecutors. The atmosphere held no raised voices, only the weight of options presented in plain terms. Proceed to indictment and trial under federal statutes for obstruction, witness intimidation, and related financial offenses. Or cooperate. Provide material assistance. Mitigate exposure. Kevin's right hand rested flat against the polished table. One finger tapped once against the surface, a staccato note that stopped as soon as it began. His eyes lowered to the resignation paperwork placed before him, formal language outlining voluntary separation, forfeiture of certain privileges, acknowledgement of pending legal consequences. The words did not soften what they meant. His mouth compressed into a thin line. The tendons in his neck stood out briefly as he swallowed. He picked up the pen. The tip hovered above the signature line. A pause long enough to register the fracture between who he believed himself to be and what the record now reflected. Across the room, Catherine sat beside counsel. Her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles pale but steady. She did not look away when Kevin's gaze lifted toward her. His voice carried low, meant for her. "You think this ends me," he murmured. "It just tells you how many other men learned the same lessons." Catherine held his eyes. Her breathing remained even. Kevin lowered the pen and signed. Ink settled into paper. The line completed. The courtroom carried no drama beyond its function. Fluorescent panels hummed overhead, casting an even, indifferent light across varnished benches and federal seal. Air moved through vents with a low mechanical persistence. Proceedings advanced by docket number, not emotion. Outside the witness room, Catherine sat beside her attorney. Her back remained straight against the molded chair. Both hands rested on her knees, fingers extended, then curling slightly before flattening again. She fixed her gaze on a blank section of wall as voices filtered through the door cadence without clarity. Argument reduced to rhythm. When the clerk called her name, she rose without hesitation. Her steps into the courtroom were measured. Heel to tile, shoulder alignment squared, chin level. She took the oath with a steady voice and sat in the witness chair, adjusting it once, minimally. She began at the beginning. Arrival at the restaurant. The initial complaint delivered in a tone calibrated to provoke. The progression from dissatisfaction to personal commentary. The fixation on her appearance language chosen to humiliate without triggering immediate managerial intervention. She described how volume was modulated, how proximity was used as leverage, how each remark was placed to isolate her while maintaining plausible deniability. She recited the bill amount $180. The gratuity $1 placed precisely on the receipt, like a notation rather than compensation. Her breathing remained even. She described leaning toward him and whispering her mother's name. She did not characterize his reaction. She listed it. Rapid blinking, inconsistent with ambient light. A visible swallow. A masseter muscle contracting along the jawline. The abrupt scrape of chair legs against tile as he stood. There was no tremor in her delivery. The restraint in her tone allowed the gallery to assemble the force behind it. Under cross-examination, defense counsel approached with a stack of documents and a voice sharpened by insinuation. He suggested motive, vindictiveness, coaching, emotional instability. Catherine's eyes did not drift. When a question implied fabrication, one eyebrow lifted a fraction before settling. When asked why she preserved the receipt in a sealed envelope rather than discarding it, she answered without inflection. "Because I knew he would try to erase what happened," she said, "and because I wanted the truth to stay clean." The envelope had been logged, time-stamped, transferred with documented chain of custody, evidence uncontaminated by rhetoric. Later, Veronica took the stand. She did not posture. Her posture was already disciplined, spine aligned, hands folded loosely, voice modulated by habit rather than performance. She spoke as a former operator who understood after-action reports and the permanence of written statements. She described the falsified memorandum, formatting inconsistencies, metadata discrepancies, signature block anomalies. She explained how administrative authority had been leveraged to construct a narrative protective of rank rather than fact. When the memo was entered into evidence and displayed, the seam in the fabrication became visible. Revision history misaligned with official timestamps. Veronica's eyes glistened once. She inhaled through her nose, held for a measured second, then continued. Kevin watched from counsel table. His expression retained its architecture of control-neutral mouth, forward gaze. But his hands rested before him, fingertips pressed together until the knuckles blanched. They separated briefly, then pressed again, a silent compression attempt against an outcome no longer negotiable. The judge delivered findings in language stripped of flourish. Obstruction. Retaliation. financial crimes, abuse of position. Each term entered the record without emphasis. Kevin's resignation was acknowledged. The titles attached to his name dissolved in a sentence read aloud. No applause followed. Court staff began organizing files for the next matter before the echo had faded. Outside, winter air cut clean across the courthouse steps. Catherine inhaled deeply. The cold expanded her lungs, sharp and clarifying. Veronica stood beside her, not touching, not crowding, close enough that presence functioned as ballast. Catherine lowered her eyes to her hands. No tremor. There was no surge of triumph, no visible exhale of celebration. Only a quiet recalibration, an internal boundary redrawn. Her phone vibrated. A message from her restaurant manager. Her position would be held if she wanted it. No obligation. Recognition without pressure. She read it once, thumb hovering over the screen before locking it and slipping the device into her coat pocket. Traffic moved along the street. Pedestrians crossed against the light. Ordinary continuity resumed, indifferent to the institutional effort required to prevent repetition. She stepped forward. One pace, then another. Behind her, the courthouse door opened again. Footsteps struck stone with urgency. A voice called her name, tone edged with unfinished business, suggesting inquiries that extended beyond Kevin. She did not turn immediately. Her shoulders paused mid-motion. She drew one controlled breath, held it, then released. Only then did she pivot toward the voice. If this story mattered to you, subscribe to the channel to continue following what happens next.